Question 1. Outline an example of how media code or convention has been used to convey meaning in one media narrative that you've studied this year. So obviously you want to include the narrative name, director and year, and then identify a code or convention and then discuss the meaning. So remember, think about that Year 11 analysis structure for that. And please, when you're referring to acting, don't refer to characters, refer to the code of acting as employed in the construction of meaning. So meaning, how do we make sense of it? What does it mean? How do audiences read that? Question 2. Discuss how media codes and conventions worked together to convey meaning in one part of one media narrative that you studied this year, using a different one to the one you used in question 1. So remember to read ahead so you don't get confused and lock yourself into the wrong narrative. Media codes and conventions. So it's important that you're discussing a code with a convention, not two codes, not two conventions, and one part of a media narrative. So best option for you here is to look at the opening sequence or maybe the resolution, and you need to discuss something like character establishment and the use of camera or use of music or audio specifically. It is really important that you are describing two things with one meaning. A code and convention that apply to a specific meaning in one scene. Question 3. Explain how a media code and/or convention was used to create audience engagement in one media narrative you studied this year. The media narrative may be any of the narratives you studied this year. So a code or convention, probably one or the other for a 4-mark question. Audience engagement. How do we make the audience interested or invested in the story? How are we connecting to them emotionally? That's the element of engagement that's important here. So we might talk about, in waves, we might talk about the use of music to engage a contemporary audience. Identify that audience. Identify it as a young American audience interested in drama. How do we engage them? Through contemporary music that they themselves might be listening to. That allows the audience to connect to the characters a little bit more. Engagement is about emotional connection. Don't forget that. Question 4. Explain why audience readings made by the intended audience may be different from readings made by present-day audiences. You may refer to one narrative and maybe any narrative. So for this question, we would want to look at 10 Cloverfield Lane because we've got essentially an historic text, and we want to look at the different way in which audiences make meaning from the film. So we have to link that to social and ideological context potentially. We want to look at things like the 2016 Trump-Clinton election. We may then look at present-day audiences and their knowledge and experience of COVID and the lockdowns, and how that may actually change the way people believe different characters such as Howard and his beliefs that are expressed through his character. Question 5A. Describe how your exploration of style and genre informed the development of your media production design. Don't get tripped up on the word development. It is actually all about your media production design, which is everything from your intention to your script and storyboards and mock-ups and so on. So, what did you do in your research, specifically with respect to style and genre, that informed what you wrote down in your folio for your media production design for those particular sections, and even maybe how you wrote your screenplay or how you constructed your mock-ups? Don't get caught up or don't get confused about this particular aspect of the question. Question 5B, describe how the development of your skills in the use of media equipment, technologies or processes informed the development of your media production. This has got just about every aspect of the media production process in here, but it is all about describing what you did for your production experiments, because it is skills in the use of media equipment, technologies or processes in the development of your production. So what you want to do is talk about how you might have experimented with color or editing or composition, and how that helped to develop your concept. Question 6. Audience engagement, consumption and reception are central to media production. Don't worry about that part of the question, because it's just something to make reference to when you respond to the rest of the question. How did your understanding of your proposed audience inform aspects of your media production design? Media production design is your everything from intention to your screenplay or mock-ups. So proposed audience, you must describe your audience in detail. So discuss them more than just your age or gender. You want to talk about their interests as well, and then explain how they may engage or how your narrative attempts to engage your particular audience. Maybe something may resonate with them particularly heavily based on your research of those. Remember, you did an audience survey in your media production design. Question 7. Media productions offer opportunities and challenges. Explain how reflection and feedback processes helped you refine or resolve your media product. Refine is the tweaking and minor changes that you're making in your post-production stage. Resolving is basically executing on your vision. So how did reflection and feedback help you here? Reflection, you need to identify what it did and how you used that reflection process. So did you identify a particular issue around pacing in your editing? Did you identify an issue with your narrative structure or sequences that were not read appropriately? Similarly, what did you do with the feedback? How did it help you in the resolution? Did it make you change anything? Did it inform your decision around understanding? It's really important you're addressing both reflection and feedback here. Question 8. The images below show two families consuming media, one in the 1950s and one in the present. Describe what these images suggest about changes in the relationship between the media and audiences. So please, with a question like this, if you're ever given visual stimulus, you're not analysing the photography, you're not analysing the acting or expression. You are actually just inferring, and remember this is agency and control, you're inferring that the kind of relationship audiences have with the media. So you want to talk about this idea of linear programming here versus Web 2.0 on-demand platforms that all of these modern or contemporary audiences are consuming. That's our focus for the question. It should be built around that idea, nothing to do with an analysis visually. Question 9. Evaluate the impact of one ethical or legal issue on at least one of the following: the production, distribution, consumption, or reception of a media product. So, extract what you're going to do here. Is it legal or ethical? And is it going to be on production, distribution, consumption, or reception? So if we're looking at an ethical issue, we have to evaluate the actual impact it has on one of those elements. So we might talk about ethical issues surrounding user-generated content, Netflix, privacy, Cambridge Analytica, the idea of copyright or piracy, the issues surrounding body image, and then we have to identify the impact, evaluate the impact, it is debated, have some sort of qualifier in your response, because you cannot be definitive in this kind of response. And just make sure you're signposting with this, embed that language, production, distribution, consumption, or reception in your response. Question 10. Describe one rationale for regulating the relationship between the media and audiences in Australia. So a rationale is a reason for regulation. So protecting vulnerable audiences is a good one, obviously. Also cultural identity. And we have to describe what is the reason for it. Like, why do we have the need to protect cultural identity, for example? It's important you're justifying this. You can't just say it. You don't necessarily need to embed an example of this, but you do need to describe the reason why a rationale like this exists. Question 11. Identify and describe one issue related to the way in which the media is used today by globalised media institutions and individuals. Don't forget the and. So we would want to talk about global media institutions are those that cross borders, such as Netflix and YouTube and the like. You could talk about things like geo-blocking, copyright, other various social media platforms and the issues surrounding regulation. But you also have to address the individual's aspects. So you need to include some reference to the individual usage of such tools as well. And then the issue. What is the actual issue? Are we talking about issues surrounding the ability to regulate? Are we talking about issues surrounding agency and the ethical issues surrounding publication of inappropriate material? That sort of thing. Section B, question 1. Analyse how media narratives are shaped by the ideological and/or institutional context in which they are produced, distributed, consumed, or read. Remember the ands and the ors in this question. In your response, refer to the media narratives that you studied this year. Refer to both. That means we have to refer to both media narratives, and we have to discuss the ideological or institutional context. I wouldn't be doing and for this because there's just way too many things you have to address. Make sure with section B you're writing at least 2 pages and you are addressing the assessment criteria at the back of the exam here, because things like the discussion of relationships between media narratives and audiences, including construction, engagement, consumption and reading, are not in the question, but they need to be addressed in your response. So, with limited time, make sure you're addressing all of those things and write down a plan for your response before you start so you get the structure correct. Section B, question 2. Discuss the dynamic and changing relationship between the media and audiences. In your response, refer to one or more of the following: globalised media institutions, governments, and the individual, or the individual, one or more. Dynamic and changing relationship implies that you've got to identify a change in the way audiences connect with media, and it may be that you discuss something in relation to globalised media institutions such as YouTube or Facebook or any other social media platform. You may want to talk about the difficulty of administering government controls in an internet-dependent world, the use of algorithms to direct audiences to content, the power of celebrity and propaganda, YouTube influencers, fandoms, gatekeeping, filter bubbles, and changes to audience behaviours such as binge watching. Don't forget to address the assessment criteria at the back of the exam. Lots to talk about with this question.